Hello and welcome. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something huge, a massive, foundational part of our economy that's been hiding in plain sight, thanks to a kind of invisibility cloak. Let's get into it.
So I want to start with this question. Just think about it for a second. We're always tracking economic growth, right? Measuring productivity. But what if the very tools we use are blind to an enormous amount of work that's absolutely essential? What are we really missing?
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. On the left, you've got things that count towards our gross domestic product, our GDP. On the right, things that don't. See the pattern? The work itself is often identical. Paying for childcare? That counts. But raising your own child? Nope, that's invisible to GDP. And this isn't some mistake. It's completely by design. It's a paradox right at the heart of how we measure our world. And that brings us to our first section. We're going to dig into why so much of this critical labor gets completely ignored, basically rendered invisible in the economic stats we all rely on. This invisibility cloak is the perfect way to think about it. It's thrown over all this unpaid labor, the childcare, the elder care, the cooking, the cleaning, all the stuff that forms the actual foundation of our society. I mean, without it, no other economic activity could even happen. Yet, officially, it's like it doesn't even exist. So who's drawing the line here? That leads us right here to uncovering the role that actually creates this invisibility. Because again, this isn't an accident. It's a very specific line drawn in the sand by economists and statisticians. And here it is, the production boundary. This is the official term for the rule. It's part of a global standard for how we measure economies, and its job is to decide what counts as production and what doesn't. If something you do falls outside this boundary, well, economically speaking, you might as well have not done it. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It gets right to the heart of how kind of arbitrary this boundary can feel. It's the exact same work. But the simple act of a market transaction, money changing hands, is what makes it suddenly visible to our economic radar. And that has some massive implications. So what exactly is being left out? Well, as you can see, it's a huge list of essential tasks. All that household production, all the caregiving for kids and elderly parents, all the volunteer work. And here's the really crucial point. This work is disproportionately done by women, all around the world, which of course leads to a major data gap. And this is where those consequences of the production boundary just become crystal clear. Let's take a look at how this directly skews our understanding of women's economic contributions. Now, just look at this number. This is wild. Economists estimate that if we just decided to count all this unpaid work and give it a market value, the GDP of many countries would jump by 30 to 50%. That is a staggering amount of economic value that we are actively choosing to ignore. And because all that work is ignored, this is what our official statistics often look like, a pretty significant gap in what we call the labor force participation rate. This chart shows the world as defined by that production boundary, but it is definitely not a picture of all the total work actually being done. Now, of course, the production boundary isn't the only thing going on. It's a huge piece of the puzzle for sure, but there are other very real factors that contribute to this gap, at least in the paid labor force. We're talking about things like occupational segregation, where women often get channeled into lower-paying jobs, the gender wage gap, which is still very real, the sheer weight of family responsibilities, and, of course, deeply ingrained social and cultural norms. But there is one factor that has a uniquely powerful positive effect, and that's education. Time and time again, it's one of the strongest predictors of whether women participate in the paid labor force. And it creates this incredible positive cycle. It boosts earning potential, which makes working for pay a much better deal. It opens doors to better jobs. It's also linked to lower fertility rates, which frees up time. And maybe most importantly, it boosts empowerment and a woman's say in her own life. All right, now for something really fascinating, a real counterintuitive puzzle. The relationship between how rich a country is and how much women work. Well, it isn't a straight line up. It's actually U-shaped. Let me walk you through it. So, phase one, in the poorest countries, women's participation in the labor force is often pretty high. But this isn't really about empowerment. It's about pure necessity. The family simply can't get by unless everybody is out there working, whether it's in agriculture or selling goods or whatever it takes. Then, as countries start to get a little richer, something surprising happens. Female labor participation actually drops. Once there's a bit more financial security, households can often afford to adopt that classic male breadwinner model,
And social pressures often lead women to pull back from the paid workforce to focus on the home. But the story doesn't end there. In phase 3, as countries get into that high-income bracket, participation shoots back up again, forming the other side of that U. So what's driving this? Well, it's that powerful education effect we just talked about, mixed with more career opportunities, changing social norms, and better policies that support working women.
So, after all that, why does any of it matter? I mean, these are just definitions, right? Well, no. The way we choose to measure our economy has profound real-world consequences. And here's the bottom line, the most important takeaway. What we choose to measure reflects what we, as a society, actually value. So by leaving all this unpaid care and domestic work out of our main economic numbers, we're making a silent statement that this work just isn't as important. And that has a huge ripple effect. These definitions shape government policy on everything from taxes to childcare support. They influence social norms about gender roles, and they fundamentally shape our idea of what progress even looks like. If GDP goes up, we cheer and call it progress, even if it's happening on the back of all this invisible, uncounted work that holds everything together.
Which brings us to this last critical question to just let roll around in your head. If our main economic health gauge, our GDP, is blind to this enormous amount of work that literally sustains us, what else are we not seeing? What are we getting wrong about our economy, our progress, and maybe even our priorities?